is there a natural process for blockchain? I mean, I came from the university, so I was already doing research. So I actually started in the blockchain when I was in 2015 at the National University of Singapore. And of course, Pratik Saxena came to me with the problem. He said, we're cloud computing, right? I mean, you send your query to Amazon, it comes back, the answer is 47. I mean, how do you know the answer is 47, right? So that's, can we do better? So that's, 4 years later, here we are with I guess what I would consider the TrueBit solution, which I presented here today. But I would say the moment that I really got hooked on it was when we put up the first paper with the verifier's dilemma, which I also mentioned in this talk, explains why Ethereum needs a gas limit. Anyway, we sent it to the CCS to get the reports back from the referees saying, this is just it's just a theoretical concept, and this is never going to happen. But then during the rebuttal period, July 4th, there was a fork on Bitcoin that was 6 blocks deep, and then July 5th, maybe 3 blocks, same thing, and they actually changed their mind. And for me, so I guess I should say my background is in mathematics, so I never had this experience where, current events had actually altered the validity of my result. You don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, is the Pythagorean theorem going to be true today? So that's it. I never, so it was like, that was, at that point, and I was kind of, I guess it's kind of like in the instant gratification, right? And the political, right? I don't know. That was the moment for me, so. Well, we didn't explicitly choose Rust. I mean, if you look back at the white paper that we wrote in 2016, it talks about building TrueBit on top of Google Lanai, which seemed to be the best option at the time. But we ended up being one of the first projects to experiment with WebAssembly, which also happened to gain adoption and support Rust. And so, yeah, we weren't explicitly targeting Rust, but fortunately we made a very good architectural decision early on that a lot of people followed, and that is why a lot of the tooling that we have is actually also EWASM, metering, and also the Google V8 just-in-time compiler, all of these things. We were blessed with a wonderful community of developers and engineers who helped us along our way. Maybe because people don't know the difference between layer 1 and layer 2. I don't think I'm not even sure that there's an argument either. There's no, I haven't seen any sort of credible argument saying there's room to do everything on chain. I mean, all you hear is scale this and scale that, right? So it's not, TrueBit was, and I guess to go back to my original point, TrueBit was around before the word layer 2 was even being used. So we weren't like a layer 2 solution. We were just solving this problem. I mean, back then it was just, scalability was just like this nerdy thing. It wasn't like, now it's almost like a mainstream activity, but I guess there are a lot of different ways to scale, and we just tried to focus on one specific problem and do that in the best way possible. And obviously, one thing that separates TrueBit from the other scalability solutions is, rather than focusing on transaction throughput, we're just trying to get one really big transaction to go through. So we've been sort of gone in a different direction from day one, but now there are other, there are other projects that are also using the technique of interactive verification now too, which is related. But I feel glad that we've come up with sort of a product that's sort of robust and in terms of performance and usability, and so it's kind of, and it's not tied to any one specific architecture, I guess, even though we're running on WebAssembly. But yeah, I mean, someday the blockchain community perhaps needs to have their own version of WebAssembly that doesn't rely on the web browsers, because you fear like what's secure in a web browser is not necessarily secure for a blockchain. But I think that can happen in time. Right now, it's really a matter of getting people using the systems for real applications, and so that's really what exciting. When I look at TrueBit, it's like, I guess finding miners is the easy part, right? It's the task givers where we find ourselves focused on the sort of interesting business development now. Oh yeah, I mean, I mentioned, I put it, it's in the white paper. I mean, I may be too embarrassed to rehash those, what we actually thought of at first, but I mean, the original application is still there, and I think certainly the main inspiration for my co-author as well was we wanted to build a bridge between Dogecoin and Ethereum. You got to be able to check the Dogecoin proof of work inside of Ethereum smart contract. What was impossible at the time. So that was the motivation for doing TrueBit, that being able to check an S-script proof of work. And at the time, I guess I was also thinking there are other applications. Smart Pool was a project that I had done with the guys who actually ended up founding Kyber, and also Pratik Saxena, who was working with us in Singapore. And so there, you have, it's about a mining pool where the operator is actually a smart contract. But I don't know, I thought, well, again, you have to check proof of work, then you can use TrueBit to do many different kinds of proof of work. But obviously, we did build we actually did build a version of TrueBit that was specifically only played the verification game for S-script Dogecoin proof of work. I mean, that was like a stepping stone along the way. I think Christian Reibesner, who is the co-author of the paper, he started developing that, I think, in maybe end of 2015, beginning of 2016-ish. And obviously, it was exciting to, be able to create and construct an architecture that would support general computation, because this was honestly 3 years ago in 2016, it was pure science fiction, what do you mean by one computation step, right? I mean, so that was, now we know what we mean, so that's good. We've come a long way.
Well, cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was just really amazing to, be able to participate in this event, and please.
I was going to say, thanks for coming over all the way. It wasn't just like popping down the road to go to an event. You put in a good distance. Yeah, well,
it's. I'm glad to be here and spend time with the crew over here in Berlin. So thanks for having me.